Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 75 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. Now, before we meet tonight's legendary guest star, I want to dedicate this episode to the memory of the late great Grant McFarlane, who played Lothar on Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Now, before I introduce tonight's guest star here tonight, let me tell you exactly who this man is. This is the man who not only took part in popular franchises such as the Hercules, Xena, and Lord of the Rings series, but he was the main villain in one of my favorite Power Rangers series, Power Rangers Ninja Storm. And lastly, this is a gentleman who I have the great amount of respect for, and he's just a true one-of-a-kind actor. My guest at this time is Chubu himself, Mr. Bruce Hopkins. Bruce, welcome to the show. Welcome, sir.
Cheers. I'm sitting here. Thank you for the wonderful welcome, Peter. I'm sitting here looking at myself on the Zoom, and my coloring is weird. I've just had a winter ocean swim. I swim all year round in the ocean. And it's winter here, so it's really cold. The water's really cold, and my lips are blue. My skin looks red. So I'm looking at myself going, far out. I should have had my swim much earlier.
How are the winters in New Zealand?
We're having a really nice spell of weather at the moment, like sunny and sort of warmer weather during the day, but it's quite a chill. We get New Zealanders in this position where we are we're caught between the southern weather systems coming off the Antarctic and the systems coming down from the Pacific Islands. So we get really unsettled weather. Like we have it's very unpredictable. There's a band called Split Ends. And many years ago, I think it was Split Ends who did the song 4 Seasons in One Day. And or it might have been Crowded House, actually, one of the guys from Split Ends, his next band. And so 4 Seasons in One Day is a sort of term that is applied to, in particular to Auckland here in New Zealand. But and that's why with filming, with all the filming, it's been incredible that the Power Rangers has been able to set itself up like it did in Auckland for so long. But we didn't have proper film studio facilities here. Hercules and Xena, it was all done in tin sheds, big corrugated iron sheds that were repurposed to be studios, but there was never any really good insulation. Same with Lord of the Rings. Oh. Lord of the Rings was all shot in warehouses, old corrugated iron and concrete warehouses in Wellington. And so there was no real full sound insulation, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty amazing that they made all of those shows under those conditions. We just did not have proper film studios. We've got Peter Jackson's built his own film studios in Wellington now, and we have one main proper film studio up here in Auckland, but they're starting to. There's a couple actually now here in Auckland. So things are happening. There's quite a bit of production down here in New Zealand at the moment. But yeah, it's a hard case because all of those things were shot in corrugated iron warehouses and sheds. In Wellington, for Lord of the Rings, they used to have a person would sit up on a hill called Miramar, which is by the Wellington airport. And that person's job was to radio through to the film crews around Wellington who were filming Lord of the Rings to tell them that there was a plane approaching or there's a plane lining up to take off. Because if they were just about to shoot a take in one of these studios, they would hear those planes. So that the take would get called. The first idea about, okay, we'll hold it. We're going to hold for 5 minutes. We've got a plane approaching. We'll just hold this shot for 5 minutes, and you'd have to hold while this plane landed, and you'd hear the noise of the plane outside, and then you could go. It was pretty crazy stuff, really.
Very cool. And I definitely want to ask you, sir, before we get into the Power Ranger Ninja Storm questions and the Xena and Hercules, I have this is gonna be a typical cliche question, and that is, how did you get your first start into acting? Take me there.
I became an actor because I was a dancer. So I was about to become a father with one of the other dancers in the company, a full-time, professional dancer. and and one of the other dancers and myself, we'd been a couple for a number of years, and we were about to have our first baby, and she couldn't go on tour with the dance company anymore. So I thought, well, I don't want to be heading off on tour with dance companies, with the dance company, and while I have a baby at home. So I decided to leave dancing, and I got asked to do a season of West Side Story here in Auckland. So West Side Story hadn't been performed professionally in Australasia for 30 years or something. So this was quite a significant production, and it turned out to be a really successful production. And the director of the theatre company that was doing it, it was New Zealand's only full-time theatre company, he offered me a contract as an actor to stay on after that season. I was hired for West Side Story. I was essentially hired just for my dancing, because they wanted a professional dancer within the Jets gang. So my character was Diesel in the Jets gang, and yeah, so he offered me, he asked me to stay on as a company actor after that, which was cool. So I've never done acting lessons or anything. I've only done I've learned on the job.
And as an actor, though, I gotta get your I want to get your advice on this, though. Are there any like pre acting or like methods or warm ups you do before you prepare yourself for a role?
No, usually just try to do a little bit of a voice warm up, vocal warm up, just to try to make sure you're sort of feeling, like the you can go as basic as unique New York, unique New York, unique New York. So you're just doing stuff like that. So just trying to loosen up the muscles and everything. And then if it's a TV or a film shoot, the first time I do my first scene, I just try to be sort of quiet leading up to it. I'm as you can tell already in this interview, I'm a talker. So I just try to be quiet and make sure I'm aware of what you got to try and make sure you know your lines really well, but also just observe the scene that you're in, including the film crew. Part of the reason I love acting is because you're part of a team. It's not so much that it's just about me doing my bit. I love watching the crew on film shoots and TV shoots. It's such an amazing team environment. And so when you buy into that team, that you're just part of this team, it's not about you. And yes, this moment's going to be about you because the camera's on you and the lights are on you, and the mic, the sound boom up or whatever. It's all you better be doing your job, because everyone else has done their job to get to this point, and now it's your turn. So I love being part of that. So I take a bit of time to kind of soak that all up, really. And yeah, I usually I'll sometimes just go stand in a little spot where I can be just quiet by myself.
Oh, okay. And I gotta ask you, like, as an actor too, like in case, like, if there was a scene, and I want to get your opinion on this as an actor, like, if you were required to do a scene where, like, a character, like, where you and an actor have to engage in like this heated argument and tap into real life emotion, like raw emotion, and then the person goes up to, like, a person will go up to you and say, Mr. Hopkins, this scene requires us to go into a shouting match. I know this is gonna sound very weird, but I need you to lay into me to make this feel very real. If you are approached with a approach with like that from a fellow actor, how would you react to that approach? And do you agree with it?
No, that's cool if if they're saying that's what they need to be able to bring their performance, as long as it feels right for my character. Like, that's the thing. A lot of actors, it seems, don't like watching playback of themselves. But when I do a scene, when I do my very first scene on a shoot, I will quite often go over to the video split, to the person who's operating the visuals, for the director to look at and playback and everything, I'll quite often go over and say, is there any chance I can have a look at that? After, when the director has called a shot, my very first shot, and gone, okay, cool, we'll take that one, you know, because you might go, okay, let's go again, we'll do this, and we'll try that angle, or we'll do this. But once the director's gone, yep, cool, that's a buy, then I like to go to the video split operator and watch a playback of that scene, because that lets me know what energy level the director sees my character at for that scene. So then that's up to me now to transpose that into the character in the wider context of the character. So, but knowing that that's the energy level for, if my character was meant to be emotional at that point, then I'll be able to see that and go, okay, so I don't want to take it too far if I'm going in another direction. So if someone comes to me and says, I need you to really shout at me and stuff, if that doesn't feel right for my character, my energy levels would be like, no, my character wouldn't go like that. My character will be angry, but I'll show you I'm angry, but I'm not going to be yelling and screaming angry. I'll have it in my face and my demeanor, but my character wouldn't be a yeller and a screamer. So I'd stand up for my take on my character in that situation, but most of the time it's like, cool, you know, if that's what that person needs.
Yeah, I would be the first. Like, if I was doing a scene with you, Mr. Hopkins, I would approach you and say, excuse me, Mr. Hopkins, it says that in our scene that we're supposed to play, like, you know, these rivals. Like, and I would give you, like, you know, I would tell you, listen, Mr. Hopkins, like, to make, like, I'm not going to be offended whatsoever. You could say anything you want. You could talk about, like, you could take a lighthearted jab at my podcast. Instead of saying Petey's awesome guest panel, you could say it's Petey's awful suck panel. Like, I would encourage you to actually say that, because I want it to feel very real.
But by the way, my name is Bruce. Don't call me Mr. Hopkins.
Sorry.
That feels weird. It's like,
sorry, just a respect thing. I'm sorry.
no, yeah. It's Bruce.
Sorry, Bruce.
No, that's cool. It's cool. I'm sort of joking about it. It's interesting to hear you call me Mr. Hopkins, because it's a little bit like, it was always fascinating going over, especially after Lord of the Rings, getting invited to fan conventions and seeing the it's kind of it's a respect thing, I suppose, that people have. And back here in New Zealand, you know, some people go, well, what are you going to fan conventions for? You know, gambling's not like a major character or whatever. But it's just really, I find, it wasn't about going to fan conventions because people adore you. It was about the fact that you allow people to communicate how much the project that you are part of means to them. It's not about, you know, adoring you and stuff. And so it's really been really interesting to see that kind of level of respect for the stuff that I've been involved in. And then, you know, to hear you say Mr. Hopkins, that's where I hear that in your addressing me as that. I hear that in terms of, it gives me an insight into how much you regard the work that I've been part of.
Absolutely.
So yes. So now, what was the question? Because I took it off into a different angle. Then.
The question was like, no, I was just basically saying, like, if we ever did a scene together, I would tell you just to, like, you will not offend me at all. Like, I would tell you to lay into me and take, like, you know, like, meta references. I would tell you, if you could take a shot at my podcast, instead of saying Petey's awesome guest panel, you could say Petey's awful suck panel, just to make the scene feel very real.
Yeah, but again, like, that would be only if I genuinely felt, or if the director said, you know, it's up to because ultimately when you're filming, you know, like, obviously if you're an A-lister or something like, you know, Chris Hemsworth or so, he might, I don't know, he might have quite a bit of say. He might be able to tell the director, no, I don't think I should do that. I'll do this. But most of the time as an actor, you got to trust the director. You know, the director's the one who's got the overarching, like, the whole plot line, the story, the feel of what the gig is. If it's a feature film, say, it's the director who's been working with the writers and the producers and everything, and hopefully with the actors a bit. but they're the ones who know how this is going to play out. So as an actor, if you're the lead role, then I've never been a lead role. So I've been a lead role on stage, like Macbeth. I played Macbeth one time, but if you're a lead role, then you need to know how that flows through. But when you're the support roles, you're a bit player essentially. So you're influencing how it's going to go, but you need to trust the director. That the director knows where they want your character to be at this point in time in the storyline. So if the director says no, don't call him a fuckwit or whatever, then you don't go that far, because you need to trust the director. Even if you feel, I want to be angry here, I want to yell and scream, then but if the director says no, that's not where we're at in the story, then you need to listen to the director. They're your boss, basically.
Very true. And I gotta ask you too, because you took part in the most iconic New Zealand show ever, Shortland Street. I want to get your thoughts on memories of shooting Shortland Street in 2002 as Marcus Bowman.
Far out. I think I've done 4 different roles on Shortland Street. That's been one of my issues, is I've never had a core cast role. Like, I've only ever been a bit player. And I actually have this is the name of my company, Action Actors, Workers Who Perform. So I started this agency. It's a temp employment agency. So I started this agency to find non-acting work for actors to do between acting jobs. I would say all around the world, whether it's LA, New York, London, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, 97% of actors are not making a living out of acting. They're all doing other work. So that's the kind of work I try to find them. So I started my temp employment agency to help support actors, because I've never made my living out of acting. The only year I essentially made my living out of acting, because I had 3 kids and everything. So I've only ever had 1 year where I earned, and it wasn't even a massive financial year, but it was the year I shot my Lord of the Rings material. So I did about 60 days shooting altogether on Lord of the Rings. So the rest of the time you're finding other work. But it's got to be work that leaves you to be immediately available for an audition tomorrow. So you got to be able to go, oh, I can't come to work tomorrow. So that's why I started that company. Now, where did I start that rave from? Oh, Shortland Street. So I have only ever been a bit player. I think the longest I shot on Shortland Street was for a month. I don't think that was Marcus, actually, that role. It might have been. But it's cool, it's been astounding. Shortland Street is now, I think it's just had its 30th anniversary in New Zealand. So it's absolutely incredible. There've been a number of actors in New Zealand who have been able to, over the years that they were core cast, buy a house. And so now be in that rare breed, an actor who owns a property. And it's been incredible that it's been able to last. I'm not actually a fan in that. I don't watch it or follow the storylines. I'm not a sort of soap opera kind of watcher. But it was always fun to go and be part of, because especially back when I haven't been on it for, have to be 10, 15 years, or 10 years anyway. But you always knew someone. You always knew some of the other actors, and a number of the other actors, but in particular the core cast. So it was really cool. It was always really cool to be involved, and then to meet the crew, because again, the size of the industry in New Zealand back then, you would have worked with crew members on different gigs over the years, and but there's a lot more people in the industry now, of course. So maybe not so, but it's quite interesting. I do find it interesting. Every now and then when I do something, I I'll be approached by someone who will say, "Oh man, I loved, your stuff on this," or "We worked together when I first came out of college," or because we do have people graduating from universities to work in the industry now. In the days when I was sort of not just starting, but even especially around Hercules and Xena days, it was just you didn't have to go to university or anything to get a qualification to work in the industry. And even today, really, one of the best ways to get into the film industry, if you, in particular, crew-wise and everything, is just getting in on the lowest rung of the ladder, making the coffees, making the teas, whatever, and then just being in the environment and having a look at it and making yourself available should an opportunity come up. And there's still a lot of people, actors as well, performers. There are actors who are coming into the industry and they've just been plucked off the street, essentially, from some kind of reasonably random thing, and they haven't gone through a qualification process or anything like that. It's acting is still a very random industry. You could be the best. I think I remember a quote a long time ago. We've never seen some of the best actors that there have ever been because they didn't get the break. They didn't get picked for that role or whatever because they didn't look right. You got to look right for the role, unless you are your name is of a value. So as I mentioned, Chris Hemsworth before, Carl Urban, who I was in Lord of the Rings with and did a lot of stuff with him, and I used to do horse riding lessons together. And I would imagine he probably calls me a friend. I call him a friend, but he's now a marquee value. So they're not going to just pluck, they're not going to replace him with someone they just take off the street because they look right. If you've got a chance to have Carl Urban in your production, you have Carl Urban in your production because he's worth a lot of money at the box office. But there are still shows where some people, you're purely picked because of how you look for the role. You got to be a good actor. You got to come up with the goods, but the main thing will be that you look right for the role because they've already cast the lead actor and they've already cast the person who's playing your father. If that's a significant part, then there needs to be some kind of continuity between the looks. So, I could audition for something, but I just don't look right. As a father or a grandfather of a character in a film or TV show, I just don't look right in relation to that character. So I won't get the role.
I see. And of course, you mentioned that you worked on the Xena series. I just wanted to get your fond memories of working on Xena Warrior Princess and working with Lucy Lawless.
It was cool, actually. There's if you ever you could look up a TV ad. If you looked online for television ads for TVCs for Meal Mates, a product called Meal Mates. So it's a biscuit, like a snack biscuit. So Lucy and we were both in that ad, and so I've known her from way back, and we both, her and I actually, I was kind of like the one of the first male actors at this comedy group called Funny Business. So there's a series online called Funny Business as well, and Lucy was the main female that they would call on because it was an all male comedy group. And there were a couple of women that they used most regularly, and Lucy was one of them. And I was a guy that they would call on if they ever needed another guy. So we knew each other. We'd worked together I think Funny Business was the first time that we'd done stuff together. And then, and then she cracked Lawless. No, Lawless. Sorry, Kevin Smith, who played Ares, was Lawless. I did those stuff. She cracked Xena. So yeah, it was. But I can't remember. I think the ad I don't know if we did the ad, the Meal Mates ad, before we did the funny business stuff or not. But again, as I say, we were both in the industry, and back then it was such a small industry. You know each other. You know, you kind of you touch base with a lot of people.
Oh, I see. And you mentioned, of course, gambling. Memories, of course, shooting the Lord of the Ring franchise.
What was that? Sorry, the
Oh, memories of shooting the Lord of Rings franchise as gambling.
Lord of the Rings was just magic experience. Uh, I didn't have a pleasant experience after it, in terms of my contract wasn't honored by New Line. So I'm meant to receive residuals of merchandise bearing my character's likeness, but I don't get them. And I sued New Line, and I got all the other Kiwi actors who had that in their contract together. I had a lawyer in LA, took the case, took 2 years to get to the Superior Court of LA, and they bought us out for a nickel and a dime. Basically, it's like I should still be receiving money. I could probably own a house if I got my residuals, but they screwed us. They massively screwed us. So that the back end of Lord of the Rings was crap. Apart from the fan conventions, I love that. I miss them. I haven't been invited to any for a while. And I loved going to those things just to see the passion people had, and to relive some of that stuff. You know, I love retelling the stories about it, because the making of it was just every second I was on set, or even as soon as I knew, you know, if I got a call. So my character was made up halfway through. My character's not in the book. Gamling is not in the books. There's a reference to a character called Gamling the Old, who's like a retired general of one of the Rohirrim folds. So we're the horse riders, and they decided they needed, when the Battle of Helm's Deep, they needed someone to be with King Theoden, and they created this character Gamling and offered it to me. They'd already been shooting for 9 months, and so I'd long given up any hope of being involved. And then so I get asked to go down and be, you know, get dressed into wardrobe and try out different things for a day down in Wellington, and then the next, in about 3 or 4 days time, I was down shooting my first scene, and it was just magic. And so they would fly me back. I go, we're finished with you, you know, for 3 or 4 days. That I wouldn't have any idea if I was going to be involved again or not. And then I'd get a call from my agent saying, "Oh, Lord of the Rings want to know if you're available next week." I'd be like, "Phew, yeah, I'm available next week, man." And so yeah, it just started building and building. And Philippa Boyens, who's one of the producers and writers with Peter Jackson and Fran, she came up to me during that first week at Helm's Deep. Actually, she took Bernard Hill, who was the English actor playing King Theoden. We were doing night shoots, and she came up one night, and she called Bernard aside and said, "We've got some new dialogue for you." And so she took him down to a caravan to go through this new dialogue. And she said, "You know, Bruce, would you come as well?" And so she said to me, "Look, we really like what's going on. We like the way you work with Bernard, and we like the way your character's appearing on screen and everything. So we're going to put you in some more scenes." So they kept putting me in scenes. And the classic point was probably a couple of months down the track. Might have been as much as a couple of months down the track of doing more scenes, coming back home, waiting. Oh, another scene, cool. I got the head of the horse team. We did this shot out in a car park. They flooded this car park and put a massive green screen around it out of Wellington. And it was the scene of flooded Isengard. So Saruman's been defeated, and they had Gandalf, Aragorn, I think Gimli was there as well, Legolas, and Ayama, Carl Urban, and myself all on horseback with Bernard Hill, King Theoden. And so we're all just sitting on our horses, looking supposedly at the ruins of Isengard. And after it had all flooded, and we're just sitting there. And it was 3 days of shooting, just sitting there on the horses, and the horses would get, but antsy because they're sort of in water that's about probably a meter high, maybe a bit less than a meter high, maybe. And at one point, the head of the horse team, as they would come in and they would lead us out on our horses and then lead us back into the water as well, because they just had to give the horses a break every now and then. And the head of the horse team said to me, "Oh, actually, no one seems to know. We need to know, but no one can tell us if you are a rider or not, because you look good. You look right up there on the horse." And I just said, "Well, I used to be a dancer, so I'm just watching what they're doing, because I know these guys have had horse riding lessons. Like Carl could ride, Vigo and Orlando, those guys, they got right into their riding. They were doing ongoing horse riding lessons and stuff. So I would just copy how they were sitting. I would just imitate physically how they looked on their horses. And so I said, I'm not a rider. I don't. Every time I'd ever hopped on a horse as a kid, it just bolted. I had one horse jump a fence on me one time. It just freaked me out. So I never rode horses. So they sent me off to horse riding lessons, because the guy said, "Well, we've heard that you're going to be doing some battle scenes on horseback. so you need to know how to ride." So that was, and it was things like that, it was just such a joy. It was such a absolute joy to be there every time I was down.
That's awesome, sir. And before I ask my next question, I just want to say I bless your heart for finding action actors. Like you're doing a that's so awesome that you founded that. So I just want to say bless you for that.
Yeah, it's been, and it has been cool. I have non-actors on my database now. I won a contract with a what's called Auckland Transport. They run the public transport in Auckland City. And so I won a contract to supply transport ambassadors to them. So these are people communicating out on the street and in transport hubs about what's going on, disruptions or issues around transport. And so I have non-actors on my database as well. But I do get a buzz when I see some of the actors who are doing a bunch of the work, because I pay really good rates. I pay above average rates and stuff, because I'm not into paying people survival money. And if it means I take a hit on the profitability of the company, then that's so be it. That's one of my issues with the world as it is at the moment. There's actually enough in the world that everyone could have a decent life, but we've got too many greedy people, and they don't let everyone else have a decent life because they want to put themselves into space, or they want to build the biggest house in the block and have the flashiest car and have all the power or whatever. So I have issues around that stuff. Well, not issues, I just have attitudes toward it. Toward the so in my very small way, if I have the opportunity to share the kind of profit of my business, then I'm more than happy to share it, as long as I look after my own family. My own family are my priority.
That's awesome. And one of my favorite roles that you did, of course, was Power Rangers Ninja Storm as Chubu. And I wanted to get your memories on shooting Power Rangers Ninja Storm, and of course working with the late Grant McFarlane, Katrina Devine, and Cat Brown.
Well, of course, Katrina and Cat are Kiwis, and in fact, Cat, with her boyfriend at the time, they flattered with me and my 3 children. I was a solo parent, not a single parent. My kid's mother and I, very early on, actually, we split up after our 3rd child, but we did shared parenting the whole way. And so I always would rent a house that I could have my 3 children with me. And one time I had a house that had another room, so I used to rent that out. And Kat and her and her partner at the time lived with us, me and my children, for a little while, which was really cool. Yeah, they're really cool. I haven't seen her for ages. I see her face. She's in something at the moment, or I've seen it on, it might be a rerun of something. But yeah, it was really interesting, the Power Rangers one, because it was kind of like under the radar in a way. We knew it was going on, but Power Rangers is such a whole franchise in and of itself. So there were a number of Kiwi crew who I knew were on it, and they were very happy to be on it because it was a regular job. It meant they had a steady income, and they were more than happy to just be, you know, doing Power Rangers. But it was, they used to shoot out in a Studio West, I think it was called, in the west of Auckland, and it was quite bizarre when I first went out there, because I did, what did I, no, actually, sorry, no. Power Rangers, did I don't think I ever went on set for Power Rangers, but I used to go out to the studio.
To do the voices, right?
It was, yeah, because we did the voice. We didn't do the voices out at the studio. We did them at a sound studio in town. And but the studio where they used to shoot it, it's kind of, it's sort of bizarre because it's almost, you wouldn't know a studio was there. It's not like some big film studio setup where you drive past and see a big lot or something, you know. It's kind of like just in a little area of its own. So as I say, Power Rangers operated for years, you know, like almost separate to the rest of the industry. People knew it was going on, and that there were people who had a regular job. That was their gig. So for actors, Kiwi actors too, it's been pretty cool. You know, there's been a few actors I've known who have had core cast role in the various series of Power Rangers that got made here, and that was really cool. It wasn't, they didn't earn big money. They didn't, you know, certainly wasn't like the big paying job in town, but it was steady. If they got in as a core cast member, it meant for one of the few times in their lives as an actor, you get a steady income. Doing the voices was cool because we had, I'm trying to think, it would have been, I think, Jim McClarty is the voice. He does the voice direction essentially here in New Zealand, has done for years. And he's a Canadian, him and a woman, Laurie Dungy. I used to be in the New Zealand theatre sports team, and we competed against the Canadian team in Australia, and Canada were always a top theatre sports country. And they came over after the world champs and to live in New Zealand. And they'd been part of one of the Canadian teams. And I've known them. They both did work through my company, Action Actors, actually. And then Jim got the job of being the essentially the voice. I don't know what his full title is, but he would direct the vocal performances. Every now and then a director would come in and be with him, the director of an episode or whatever, to give some direction about how they thought a voice should be. But otherwise they left it up to Jim to do all the loop groups. Do you know what a loop group is?
Is that when you do the voices all together as like a group?
Yeah. So I remember we used to do some when the kids were when they're all in a shop, a retail shop. One of the characters used to work in a shop, I think it was, with clothing and like a surf shop or something.
Oh yes.
So I did a number of loop groups with Craig Parker. Have you ever heard of Craig Parker? He's
yeah, I have.
Yeah, so because he's Lord of the Rings and everything as well. So he used to be outrageous. Craig used to say some funny stuff, man. But the loop group is you'd be like, say, 3 women and 3 men in a group in a sound studio, and here's the shot of the shop, and there might be 3 people 3 friends enter the shop, but they're background actors, and the 2 lead characters are having a conversation. So, but one of the people entering the shop is obviously laughing, but when they're shooting it, that's all in silence. Then they wouldn't be laughing out loud, but as an extra, you get told, just make out like you're coming in the shop and you're friends and you're having a bit of a joke or whatever. And so one of them will make out they're laughing or whatever. So then the loop group have to add in the sound for that laugh. So you're watching the visuals, and then as the loop group, you're there, and it'll be like, okay, I'll do the laugh. You do that sneeze. You be the one who coughs, or the one who seems to whistle or something, So you'll work it out between you, and then you're watching they'll play it back to you, and then you get counted in, and then you start doing your sounds. So that's the loop group. So we did a bunch of that sort of stuff as well. It was quite cool. It was quite cool doing a whole bunch of that sort of thing. And then every now and then you get a chance to do like Chubo. Or...
Did you feel like when you record your lines for Chubo, did you work with the other like monster generals? Because Peter Rowley, who played I'm gonna have him on the show, Zergain. I'm gonna have him on this week. I was just curious to know, like, when you do the voices for like the characters, is it just you in a booth, or is it just a bunch of people? Okay.
No, just if it was crucial for them, like if the two characters were there together, then they might have you together, but otherwise, no, it's just you in the booth on your own, on your lonesome. They'll project the images, they'll show the images so you can see who they are.
Oh, okay. And before I ask the next question, let me just say that not only I had Kat Brown on my show twice, and not only does she speak very, very highly of you, like in the episode I interviewed her in, but when I told her I was going to have you on the show, she says he's the nicest of nice gentlemen. That's awesome.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And of course, did you have a favorite, a particular Chubo moment or line?
No, I can't. Like I say, it was a long time ago. How many years ago? Do you know how long?
Yes. Ninja Storm came out in 2003. It's going to be 20 years next year.
Look at me. You're expecting me to remember. Look, the grays. See the grays?
What gray? I don't see any grays.
Oh, I'm 66 now. I'm like a.
You don't look 60. You don't look that.
I feel like I say, I feel bizarre. My skin still looks really red to me from being in the cold water. And my lips they get a little kind of blue because of the winter water that I swim in. Hey, actually, can I promote myself for something?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So, I would encourage people to listen to my podcast. I walked the length of New Zealand 4 years ago. It's 3,000 kilometers through the mountains, the forests. There's a thing called the Te Araroa Trail. It's one of the world's great walks now, and it only became a reality in 2011, I think. And so I decided I would try and do a podcast, and I did it with a Radio New Zealand's national broadcaster, and they jumped on board with it, and it was just such a buzz. So if people want to have a listen to the podcast, it's called The Long Way Home. If you look up just even The Long Way Home, Bruce Hopkins, or Radio New Zealand, The Long Way Home, and tune in and think about coming out to New Zealand sometime and walking 3,000 kilometers. It's not road. You're in the mountains and you're crossing rivers and you're in forests. It's like the Pacific Coast Trail in America, in a sense, because you're going through the mountains and everything. So it's a buzzy gig. And yeah, have a listen to the podcast. Now, Chubo, you said to me about doing Chubo's voice. I'd almost need to hear it again.
Can I demonstrate, sir?
Because you did one, and I thought it was a more of a growly one. It wasn't.
No, it was actually like a very like raspy voice. Like, I'll give an example. Like when when Kat Brown says, "Uncle," like as character as Capri, she goes, "Uncle, I know we're like you're in trouble and everything, but can you help us? We're kind of stuck." And then Chubo goes, "Don't you mean stuck up?"
Don't you mean stuck up?
Yeah.
Don't you mean stuck up? Oh, hey, something I don't know. Stop looking at me like that. Why are you looking at me like that?
Bruce, you still got it. You still got it, man. You still got it. I waited a long time to say that, but you still got it, man. That was.
Well, thanks, Pete's awesome guest panel. Pete's awesome fuck with guest panel. What? No, that wasn't Juba, was it? No, I remember when. What? How was it? I can't. He was sort of not really. He wasn't the most intelligent of monsters, I don't think.
He's definitely. Oh wait a minute. This way. Yep.
That's him up there.
Yep. Oh man. My favorite line always was when they did Totally Talented, and you were like as Chubo in the back going, "Those are my girls. Those are my girls."
Those are my girls. Those are my girls. You do it better than I do it.
I gotta show you. I'll send you a link to this. But I actually recreated that scene. I showed Katrina Devine and Cat Brown. I recreated that entire scene, like move for move, verbatim. I had to study the tape at least 10 times. Like, I gotta show you it. You'll get a kick out of it. And
so how come? Can I ask you a question? How come you're so into Power Rangers?
Well, I've been a big Power Ranger fan ever since I was a little boy. Like ever since '93, I followed the franchise for a very long time. Like I followed all the seasons. And Ninja Storm, and actually, is my favorite one. And I'm not just saying this because you're on the air.
No, yeah. But what is it about Power Rangers that draws you to it?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I'm glad you asked this question. It's the it's the storylines. It's like the way you guys tell a story. Like you like Cat Brown, Katrina Devine, and Grant McFarlane are excellent storytellers, and I love good storytelling.
That's good because it's really interesting to see. So, was it a sort of morality that you got from it, or this posse who go around and fix things up and sort people's problems out? Was it to do with that, or was it just that you love the look of the characters initially?
That's because like even like you said, like it's the look of the characters, and it's like it builds up anticipation. There's climax, like what's gonna happen. Chubu just captured the Wind Rangers. Tune in next week to find out. It's like that anticipate. I'm fluttering my words, but it's like that excitement. Like you're ready to see the next episode. Anticipation.
Yeah, cool.
But that's what I love about it.
Cool, Peter.
And of course, I gotta ask. Are there any funny or silly behind-the-scenes stories you could share while filming Power Rangers Ninja Storm?
Sorry, my phone, my landline phone is going in the background. You'll probably hear that. Can you hear that?
Yeah, but it's okay.
I'll leave it. I don't. Sorry. So what were you saying?
Oh, I was just wondering if there's any funny or silly behind-the-scenes stories you had while filming Ninja Storm.
While filming the
Power Rangers Ninja Storm.
Power Rangers. No, yeah, because like I say, pretty much all of my stuff was in the sound studio, just doing the voiceovers and everything. So I don't think I ever filmed on set with Power Rangers.
What about of course I wanted to get your work on Jack of all trades.
Is that what you? Sorry, my phone was going. It was cutting. So was that? Did you mean Herc and Xena, or did you say Power Rangers?
Power Rangers.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was ever. I do not recall ever going on set for Power Rangers. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And of course, I wanted to get your thoughts on working on Jack of all trades as Captain Standish.
Yeah, that was cool. I only ever did the intro. You know that it's that intro sequence at the start of the show. So, and I would have liked to have done an episode of that, but I only ever, for Jack of all trades, I was only ever in the intro. I did, did of course Herc and Xena, and I did an episode of 25. What was that called? That was another one. So Jack of all trades came out of the Herc and Xena stable. So Rob Tappert and then he married Lucy Lawless and everything. So he when Hercules and Xena finished, they were finishing up. They started up Jack of all trades. They did Hercules Junior. What was that called? Was that called?
Was it Young Hercules or Hercules?
Young Hercules, yeah, Hercules Junior. Yeah, Young Hercules. So I did an episode of Young Hercules, And then they got Jack of all trades together, and I kind of was a dancer as much as anything in that sequence that you're referring to with Jack of all trades. And then they also did they they kind of made a bit of a balls up of it. I remember they did this series. Have you ever heard of what is it called? Cleopatra 25. Cleopatra 2525.
I think I have. Refresh my memory.
So that came out of the same stable that Rob Tappert and the guys doing Hercules and Xena, Jack of all trades, young Hercules. They did this thing called Cleopatra 2525. 2025 25 25 and and it was cool. I did this episode in there, and it's these really cool American actresses, and one of them was quite famous, and one of them's in Suits now. One of them, she's like a lead actor in that series Suits, TV show Suits. But it was my first ever sort of on film kiss too, just a little peck on the lips with one of these babes. But it's futuristic, and they're all basically in bikinis. Oh. That's what they're dressed in. So they apparently what happened, because they only ever shot one season of it, because they thought they were going to get the teenage female market. And that's what they were aiming for. They wanted to make this series to capture the teenage female viewing market. And lo and behold, the three main actors are a gorgeous woman, and they're essentially in bikinis the whole way through, but futuristic kind of thing. And all the advertising and everything, all the promotion that they'd done as a marketing for the show, that went toward people who, the companies that make stuff for young teenage women, thinking that's who will follow this show, because they're all superhero women. And so, but unfortunately, because they dressed them in bikinis and everything and made them look so sexy, it was teenage boys who were watching it, not teenage girls. So they completely missed their market. And so it only ever got one season. It's like they didn't get funding. The return on investment wasn't sufficient to justify another season, because they completely missed their target market, which was young teenage women, not young teenage men.
Interesting. And
so it's and that's what the industry is like. If you just have a look at what goes on, if it's on television, especially in the old days, it's all about advertising. So who can we sell advertising to during this show? So if you as a broadcaster don't think you can sell advertising to the people you want to have watching your TV station or your channel or your cable network, then you're not going to get that show, because that doesn't attract the audience you want. So it's a fairly brutal world, that the whole industry, it's like that for music, for TV, for film. That's where it's really exciting with the digital realm. What you're doing now, this is so independent of that machine.
I see what you mean. And when you worked on Hercules, the Hercules series, did you get to work with Latham Gaines, who's also a New Zealand actor?
Yeah. I used to see Latham around quite a bit, because he was, he was American, I think I recall, but he lived here. Yeah, he was cool.
Yeah, I had him on my show. He's a very nice guy. I actually, because this is how much of a fanboy I am, I said, could you please, Mr. Gaines, there I go with the Mr. again. Could you please, in character as Mesogog threatened me, and he was happily to oblige. I loved every moment of it.
You're living vicariously through your vlog. Is this what do you call this? A vlog cast or a
podcast?
Yeah.
Of course, you and speaking of Latham Games, he actually played the main villain on Power Rangers Dino Thunder, which you made appearances on as Ruby Dragon in House of Cards. memories of playing Ruby Dragon, of course, working on Dino Thunder.
Again, like all I did was go into the sound studio, and then they play you the playback of the character that they've filmed. So they've had someone there doing that character, but not. It's it's interesting too, because sometimes they would provide a guide voice. So there would be someone voicing the character, but it's just someone speaking the words just to get the kind of timing right. And it's a hard case because often they would be, not an actor. And so they wouldn't be trying to play the character. So that kind of thing, you'd watch Ruby, just there, and then you've got to match yourself, your voice to where they are and what the dialogue is. With this other voice, they'll play it back to you initially with the other voice so you can hear the dialogue, and then you have it written down, because with those scenarios, you only get given the dialogue when you walk in there. You don't get it beforehand, so you can get familiar with it. You get handed it there, and then you go in the studio and you're reading it. You're looking at the screen and reading at the same time, just to try and make sure that you're matching up. So that's all I did for that character.
Would it be similar to the other roles you've done, like Gacko, Clubster, and Rigbach and Praskis?
Yeah, they're all done that way. Those characters, because unless it's something where you can see the lips specifically, and it's a very you're speaking, but even then you can lip sync. You've probably seen things, I imagine, over the years where that's not that person saying that. It's someone speaking, lip syncing to their, like. Did you ever hear of the band Milli, the duo Milli Vanilli?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was their major controversy, was that they would go and do their live gigs, and they would be lip syncing to a recorded sound that's getting played to the audience, and they're on stage and then that was the first time that it ever got kind of busted, really, and that was their downfall, because that caused it. I doubt you were born back then, but it caused an outrage. It was such a scandal that these guys how dare they go out on stage and perform in these big concerts, because they were number one, like they were top of the pops, and they're lip syncing. They're not even singing on stage for real. So the audience is getting hoodwinked by having recorded vocals when these guys are on stage. It caused a real controversy.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was huge.
Of course, and I'm gonna sound like a total nerd when I ask this question, Bruce, but when I'm not dieting, like on a strict diet, I am an absolute huge foodie. And of course, I wanted to ask you like this question, like, out of all the production companies you worked for, including Power Rangers, which had the best catering scene?
Actually, probably Lord of the Rings. It was astounding. We would be down in the mountains in the South Island, where we shot scenes like Pelennor Fields, the big final battle, or the refugee when the Rohirrim, my people, the horse riding people, when we were taking our people on the refugee march from Edoras to Helm's Deep. We would be shooting on a mountain called Kelvin Heights down in Queenstown. But especially with the horse stuff, the up in Twizel, shooting Pelennor Fields, and also at Mount Sunday, actually, where Edoras was. That was right in the middle of the mountains, and 200 or 300 extras would be bussed in from Christchurch that morning. So they'd leave Christchurch at like 2:00 in the morning to get to location by 5, and then they'd all go into these massive marquees, because there's nothing there. You're in the mountains, so they'd go into these massive marquees and get their costumes on. We would get picked up as the actors, the core people, and we would get driven an hour from where our motels were to this location through the mountains. and you get your costumes on in your camper van and things, and then you go into another marquee, and out of the back of two catering trucks would be these breakfast for just, like I say, 200-300 people, let alone the crew, who there's at least 100-200 crew on those particular locations and things. And that was just astounding. And the food would be absolutely delicious. Really cooked breakfast. What was that?
Did you have a particular favorite meal from catering?
No, I loved them all, eh? Like, yeah, they just came up with such variety as well. It was incredible. I do like, when I'm just at home, I actually porridge. When I did my big hike, 3,000-kilometer trail hike, I would have cold porridge every morning. I would put 5 tablespoons of porridge into a Ziploc foil bag at night with water in, and I'd have little bits of dried fruit that I'd had. So this is all you're carrying this all in your pack on this thing. And I would just let that soak overnight, and then I would just have that cold in the morning. That was the most delicious breakfast. That was for the tramp. But when I'm on a shoot, I must admit, eggs. I like eggs. I really like
scrambled or sunny side up.
Yeah. Scrambled eggs and poached eggs. I really, really like those when they're served up, and it's like, oh yes.
That's awesome.
Very simple.
I have a couple more questions before we wrap up here. Of course,
Yeah.
Do you prefer voiceover or acting?
Acting, ultimately, yeah, because acting's more complete. You got to try and be there physically. You're kind of there physically for voiceovers, I suppose, a little bit. But when you're on set, what I love, something I alluded to earlier on, I love being on set and knowing that all of these people, so the gaffers who look after the lighting, and the grips who look after the camera and the tracks and that side of things, the camera team themselves, the camera assists, the focus pullers, the catering, they're doing what they're doing, the ADs, the assistant directors, everyone's doing their bit. And I love, just because they go about it almost silently, because they'll have a little bit of a gathering before they set up a scene. The heads of departments, so the head grip, the head gaffer, etc., they'll get with the director and the actors, and you might mark through the scene. Okay, so you go over here, do that. You might just go through the dialogue, walking here, and they'll stand back and watch, and then you leave because you get taken back to makeup and wardrobe to get your finals, just get the last bits of touches and everything. And while you're doing that, they'll now be setting up. It'll be, the assistant director in that situation will go, rightio, cool, actors back to makeup, and we've got 15 minutes, folks. Let's get going. We've got 15 minutes to get it all set up. So from that little bit of a rehearsal and run through, everyone will know what their job is. So the gaffers, the lighting department, they'll get chucking the lights up on stands or putting the reflector boards down or getting everything set. And then same with the grips, they'll lay their tracks and get the camera working, and get the focus puller will be measuring the distances and things. And so when you come out, you're there and you're waiting for the director who will say, okay, let's get on set. And then it's you. And that's a really nerve-wracking. I find it nerve-wracking, but it's really exciting as well. It's a really cool thing because everyone else has done their bit, and now it's you. Yeah. And it's also like a little bit of a conversation between you and the camera as well, because the cinematographer, if they're operating the camera, then the focus puller is doing the focusing, because I don't know if you know that, but the focus puller won't be looking through the camera, so they can't see. They can't go, oh yeah, pull him. So the focus pullers are amazing, they've got it all measured out, and they're on remotes or on the camera, but they're judging the focus now based on what they've measured you'll be wherever you are. So they're keeping you in focus if you're going close and far or whatever. And the camera operator is at the camera, and whether it's on a dolly, like on a track, or whether they're actually walking with it, and their focus puller is doing their thing as well. And so you have to honor that, because you have to make sure you hit your marks. Because for lighting as well, it might be like, okay, don't say your line until you're on that spot there. So there'll usually be a little mark there or something. So that's where you say that line, because that's the right lighting, and that's where the focus is going to come to you on there. So you got those things playing through your mind when you're acting as well. And so it's cool, because you got to be there. You got to be on your game.
Yep, you got to live the moment, right?
Yeah. And if you screw it up, then you need to accept that as well, and don't try to blame someone else or whatever. But it's cool, because sometimes it will get, cut, let's go back. We were out of focus a little bit there, or we were whatever. So it's not your fault, but something else doesn't play quite right, so you adjust. And it's it's just it's pretty luxurious in a way. You definitely have pressure on you, but it's a pretty sweet job. Sometimes people say to me, "Oh yeah, acting, it's a hard job, eh?" I used to be a commercial cray fisherman with my father before I became a dancer, and that's a hard job. To me, acting's got its, you're exposed, you're very exposed, but it's in terms of being a hard job, it feels like it's a privilege as much as anything.
That's beautiful. And of course, you dabbled in both the protagonist and the antagonist role. Which was your favorite?
Yeah, I wonder that, I wonder whether I'd rather ultimately be, if I had one big, role to do, whether you want to be the nasty or the goody. And I think on a morality, almost on a morality level, as much as anything, not so much an acting level, but a morality level, I like the idea of goody, because I think the world needs goody at the moment. And there's a certain level of brutality where, if some characters, it's like, we don't really need to see people being assholes anymore. We've had enough of that. We've had enough of that in our world. It makes for good storylines, nasty and the battle that goes on, but yeah, I'm starting to wonder whether we need more stories where we don't need that conflict anymore. We can, surely there's room for storylines now that are just about the power of kind of love and respect, without having to show it through conflict. I don't know. It's I do a bit of I suppose it's kind of, you could put it into the spiritual realm, but like I've just finished reading a big book from this Indian guru, and yeah, you just, like, we've got so much room in this world to stop being so selfish now. We've especially the last 40 years since Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in England, and here in New Zealand it happened. We had an era here as well. We just followed that whole movement of what tends to be deemed neoliberalism, where you should just look after yourself, and if everyone in the world just looked after themselves, then everything would be good, because we'd all just be looking after ourselves. But it's like, no, because unfortunately, some of us, and I'm sure I'd probably be tempted. No, I wouldn't, because I like to think I'm that aware of it now, but when we do get excess, we become greedy and we want more and we want more. We want a super yacht now. And now we want to have a private jet as well. And now I want to have that as well. So every member of society who gets their super yacht and gets their private jet and all of that kind of stuff takes a trip to space. You know, Jeff Bezos, like, how did he get there? Oh, that's right. All those people working in those warehouses for minimum wages and living in camper vans in the car parks, because that's the best way, because they can live close to work because they work long hours and they don't want to be. That's how he got there. So him getting there takes stuff away from them.
Yes.
Even though they're serving this amazing purpose, you know, it's an incredible business and all of that sort of stuff. But sharing, you know, we just need to share it out a little bit. Rich people can still be rich, but just don't be stupidly rich. You know, give some back down to help others at least have 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day, at least have a roof over your head, at least be able to send your children to school, you know, like, and yeah, there's so I like, you know, I'd love to see stuff that feeds that awareness and kind of morality in a sense, that doesn't necessarily need to show that there has to be a baddie for a goodie to shine through. Goodies can just be goodies. Just you know, just be nice. You don't have to be nice because someone was bad. You can just be. The world can just have love and positivity without having to have it to combat something.
Totally agree. And my final question for you before we wrap up is, what's next for Bruce Hopkins? Now, this is the part of my show, because my show is an open forum. This is the part where my guest stars can say anything. They can talk about. They can say anything you want. I am passing the proverbial microphone over to you. The floor is yours, Bruce.
Well, it's not so much what's next, but something I just did, which was really exciting. Really, not so much for me. Well, I'd love to think it might be for me. They might get me back in again. But there's a New Zealand outfit called Viva La Dirt League. Have you heard of Viva La Dirt League?
No, tell me about it.
Viva La Dirt League. So LEDIRT League. Apparently, La Dirt League was already taken, so they made theirs. They called theirs Viva La Dirt League. So it's a group of I think there are 4 of them. I think it's 3 guys and a woman, but there are 4 guys in the core acting group. And they do a YouTube series, just that, or they do a couple. So they have 4 million subscribers, and they do NPC gaming and shooter gaming and stuff, but they do it them live. They play the roles. They're running around, and it's comedy. It's like they're taking the shit out of it. They're taking the mickey out of these, but they're obviously gamers and everything, because you have the little things above the head, you know, the characters when they're doing the games, but they're running around in fields out here. So I got asked to go and just do a character in a scene, and it was a bit like a Hopkins Xena scene with the armor, the leather armor and stuff. They get all of that made themselves now. They've become they're now like this full-on unknown. Most Kiwis, most New Zealanders would never have heard of them, even in the acting fraternity. And so I got to go out and do this one little scene, and it was just mind-blowing to see what they've set up. So recently, they decided they wanted to try and build their own little bit of a studio, because, as I say, the weather here is pretty rugged, and they're shooting outdoor almost all the time. And so they hoped with a crowdfunding effort that they would maybe raise $1 million. They raised $4 million. They've bought a building out in West Auckland. They're going to put that fully into a studio, and then they're building a green screen studio that they can rent out and everything to help generate the business and income and everything. And their stuff that they've done is it's fantastic anyway. Like, their acting is really good. They're so good. It's really cool. It's like, as I say, it's almost over the top, because it's about gaming, and it's making fun of it's kind of making fun of some of the angles of gaming and how it goes, the characters on screen, but it's actually fantastic. It was so refreshing to see when I went out there and shot this scene with them. So that's what was latest. I've done a couple of auditions recently. Like I have to run my company. I have an part-time operations manager. With COVID, we've lost a lot of work. So, so my operations manager's now only part-time. So I still have to run the business, but I'm very much open to acting at the moment. So if there are any directors out there and you need a Kiwi to come over and act in your, I'm available. You know, we have to negotiate it, right? But I'm you know, I love it, and I love working with people from around the world. There's an Australian guy, Judd Tilliard, who we've agreed that we're going to work. He's going to get me involved in a thing he's doing in Australia at the moment. He was a very good friend, and he was sort of mentored by my nephew, who died just recently from a brain tumor when he was like 40 years old, 3 little kids. And he was an amazing young guy and doing a lot of stuff in the film industry, including lecturing at one of the universities in Australia. So at his funeral, this guy, Judd, came back. He's been shooting in Canada for a while, and he's now shooting something in Australia. So he talked about, we talked about, let's work together in memory of my nephew, who is why we know each other. So that'd be cool. That'd be cool if that happens. And yeah, I'm open to approaches from anywhere around the world to go, you know, come and have a play, come and make some stuff. But there's a couple of like I say, a couple of auditions here as well, and one of them's pretty exciting because it's a project you'll know, because this will be the 3rd series of it. And what's really cool is there's one of the Kiwi guys who's now involved. He's been one of the directors through it, and he's now a co-producer, I think. And he's a friend of mine. He's someone I have a lot of respect for. So I'd hopefully, who knows, if I get that audition, that I've done the audition, but I haven't heard if I got the role yet. So it'd be really cool to be able to work with him on a couple of episodes of what he's doing.
Nice, and that's very awesome. And I have 2 questions before, like 2 minor questions. Well,
yeah, sorry, I rave so much because I need to get going soon too.
2 requests actually. One, of course, did you have a message you as Bruce have a message that you would like to tell? Because she's probably gonna watch this episode too. Cat Brown.
Cat Brown, hey Cat, see you around town someday. We see each other about every 6 months.
That's awesome. And of course, I definitely want to ask a question to Chubo. Does he have a special message that he would like to send to Myra and Capri?
Give me a hint again. What is it?
You talk like this.
Myra and Capri. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. You'll never get away with this. You'll never get away with this. I'll find you one day.
Yes, you will. And I gotta say, Bruce, before we conclude, I just want to say that not only did you play like one of the best, most badass generals in a Power Rangers series, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the air. He's actually one of my personal favorites. Chubo is actually one of my personal favorites of all time. But I'm gonna tell you what I told Cat Brown when I had her on the show. As you, Bruce, the person, if saints could walk this earth, that would explain you. You are such a beautiful man, and she's absolutely right when she said you're the nicest of nice gentlemen.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Pete.
Before we conclude, I'm going to give you something I waited since I was 13 to do, and this is something you deserve, and that is thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. Because you can make a 32-year-old fan, and after watching Ninja Storm, make him feel like he's back at 13 years old again. You have that special, incredible gift.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to send you a copy of this interview. You have an awesome night, and thank you for an amazing interview, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.